sneak preview at the Budget Committee meeting earlier this week. Some of you also got a little bit of a sneak preview of part of the discussion that that we're going to have here regarding value engineering on the project from the mayor when he reported out the last council meeting and the Regional Rate Committee meeting and the discussion we had there. So you got some familiarity, but we're getting to the point in the project, and I got to pull up my slides here. We're getting it to the point in the project where we're going to start asking you to spend some real money. So I thought it would be worthwhile to give you an update to show what we've done so far, where we're at, and what the future looks like. Right one?
It can be finicky, but if that one doesn't, let me just try. So if that one doesn't work, the directional arrows should work.
The one just needs to be on.
Is it on, Dan, on the side? Super side.
That looks like on. Okay, here we go. Two parts. One, I'm going to give a little bit of background. Not everybody's terribly familiar with what we do out at the regional water reclamation facility, and understanding some of the basics of what that plant does is going to be helpful in understanding what this project is going to be doing. And then the second part is going to be addressing the project specifically and where we're at. A little bit of water reclamation 101. This is the service area. The purple line is Medford. We service everybody in Medford that discharges into our sewer system. The blue line is the service area of Rogue Valley Sewer, and they are a partner with us. They provide some of the funding through an agreement we have between the city and Rogue Valley Sewer. And we provide some of the funding for the interceptor that Rogue Valley Sewer builds, owns, and operates that collects flows and takes them down to our treatment plant. So it's a partnership. You can see from the population numbers that they have roughly the same number of people in their large service area that we have within the city limits. So it's a pretty equal partnership. What the plant does, 18 million gallons a day, that's an average number. Sometimes it's lower, sometimes it's higher. There's seasonal variations. It's usually higher in the wintertime. And there are daily and even hourly variations that are usually tied to weather. We get water coming into our sewer that's not normally coming into our sewer through infiltration, through manholes, through leaks in the pipes, when we have big rain events, which often happen in the wintertime. So we can handle 20 million gallons a day on a pretty extended basis. We've gone up northwards of 40, 50, even 60 million gallons per day. And we have protocols that we can follow to be able to handle that and still comply with the requirements of our permit. Just can't do it over an extended period. The process that we use, and I'm going to explain some of this in some more detail, but we have two main parts of the process, imaginatively called primary and secondary, and I'll explain what those are. The project is potentially going to add a tertiary, a third step in the treatment process, and we pull stuff out of the water in the process. That's the solids, and there's things that we do with those, and I'll go over all of that. But the primary purpose for the plant is to comply with the Clean Water Act. We're discharging water into the Rogue River, important asset for the community, for the region, and frankly for the country. It's a renowned river. People who fish like I do make pilgrimages to the Rogue River. And it's important that we don't cause harm to the river. The mechanism that controls that is our permit. It's a lengthy document. I think we're at around 54 pages, full of technical requirements, what we can or cannot put into the river, different limits, different ways that we are required to measure, times that we measure, different reporting requirements to DEQ to remain in compliance with the permit. And now it's got some requirements for the project because the project is part of the permit. It's got compliance dates that we've got to hit different milestones on. But that is the document that governs everything we do out there. Our primary mission is to treat water to the point where we comply with that permit. I'm just going to go through really quickly what the process looks like. This is an aerial view, not the entire facility, but kind of the central component, the central process part of the facility. We've got other areas peripheral to this that are just big open basins, basically, where we handle the solids that come out of this process. But I'm going to take you step by step through what happens with the water from where it enters to where it leaves. And I'm going to do the same thing for the solids. Not going to go into a lot of details, but the water enters the plant at the bottom of the chart there. Bar screen is the first thing that happens. It's a screen that takes out the big stuff. Wash rags, pieces of trees that, because we got roots growing in our pipes, all that stuff makes it down to the facility. This weeds out the big stuff. We've pulled currency actually out of the water at the bar screen. And when we see, dollar bills that have made it through there, we can pull them out and wash them, and disinfect them, which makes us be part of a money laundering scheme, I suppose. This takes that kind of stuff out of the system, and then the water goes through a process we call grit removal, which is taking smaller stuff that makes it through the screen. It's still solids that would settle to the bottom of the water if we left it in the tank, and through the grit removal and primary sedimentation. This is a big concrete basin. We do just that. We let the heavy stuff settle out of the water, and we let the light stuff, the fats, oils, and greases that are lighter than water, floats to the top. And the water spends some time in the primary sedimentation basin. That sedimentation happens, heavy stuff on the bottom, light stuff on the top. We pull the water out through the middle. Now the water at this point in time still doesn't look terribly attractive. I was thinking of bringing some samples, but probably not a good idea. At this point in time, it's like coffee with cream is what it looks like. And what it's full of is biological material and what we call suspended solids, stuff that's dissolved or stuff that's too light to settle down to the bottom. And that's what we got to take care of in the secondary process. And you can see we got two different pieces of the secondary process. One is a big long basin. One is the round structure that you see in the lower right. Some of the water goes to each of those. If it goes through that round structure, a trickling filter where it does just that, the water comes to the top, it trickles down through some films that have, and both of these processes use biological methods to treat the water. We've got bugs, we got bacteria that we nourish and encourage them to grow. And what these things do is they eat the bad stuff out of the water. That's happening in the trickling filter. The bugs are attached to a media that the water flows down through, and it removes a lot of that suspended solids. And it happens in that basin. The basin is an aeration basin. It has little jets of water, and you can see there's multiple cells in the aeration basin, all these little boxes, and each one of those has like thousands of little jets of water coming out of diffusers at the bottom. And the purpose of that is it does two things. It keeps the suspended stuff suspended, so the bugs in this sediment in the secondary aeration tanks can work on them, and it provides oxygen to the bugs. Some of the bacteria that we use to consume the bad stuff out of the water need oxygen to survive. And it becomes apparent as I go through this, there's so many things that have to be balanced. And I neglected to mention when I started this, somewhere behind me is Johnny Levy, the manager of the Water Reclamation Division, and the guy who runs the plant. And he's got an incredibly talented team of people that understand all the processes involved, not just in removing the impurities from the water, but in keeping the right ratio of microbes to the nasty stuff that the microbes eat, the right ratio of how much of this stuff we run back through the system versus how much we run out of the system. All kinds of different criteria that they've got to track and measure to make sure this thing runs at optimum speed. And that team does a phenomenal job of doing this. I'm grossly oversimplifying here. If I had to explain everything they're tracking, I'd be lost. That's why Johnny's here, in case you want to get that deep. But the secondary process uses the biological process to remove a lot of that stuff. And then the water is still not looking terribly clean when it comes out of these secondary aeration basins. It moves up to the upper part of the picture. Those round structures are secondary clarifiers. And what the water does there is it sits, and you go through basically another sedimentation process. The bugs that have eaten all that stuff settle down to the bottom. And the water starts to become clear. It actually becomes very clear in these secondary clarifiers. They clear it. And what happens to the bugs and the stuff that they've eaten, I'm going to come back to. But the water, now that it's been treated biologically, it's been clarified, it goes to the last step. We expose it to chlorine to kill whatever is left in it. And as part of that chlorination process, it's followed by a dechlorination process. You can't put chlorinated water into the Rogue River, so you got to add another chemical additive, another step to neutralize and remove the chlorine and chlorine byproducts from that chlorination process. And that all happens as the last step that we go through in the plant, and then we dump it into the Rogue River. It's clean, meets all those guidelines, and people can fish downstream like me. So that's what happens to the water, traces the water through the plant. The solids, we pull stuff out of that primary sedimentation basin. We pull stuff out of the clarifiers primarily, and part of that we recycle. Because what we pull out of the clarifiers has got all those biological, it got all the microbes, got all those bugs that we nourish and use to clean the water. And we take some of those and put them back into the secondary aeration process where they get to do it again. And that's the RAS. It's activated sludge. Activated means that it's got the bugs in it. Sludge means what it sounds like. And part of it we return. That's the R in return activated sludge. We return it to the aeration basin and it gets to do it again. Part of it we take away from the process, and it's the WAS, activated sludge, but it's waste activated sludge. We don't need it anymore, and that's another one of those magical things that Johnny's team tracks and balances, because there's a very it's a demanding task to hit the optimum point of how much you send back through the process and how much you get rid of. If you get rid of too much, your process is not going to be able to get rid of enough of the icky stuff from the water. If you put too much in there, they're all going to starve because there's not enough food for all of it. So they got to optimize that. So some of it comes back as return activated sludge. Some of it goes to those big round structures on the left. Some of what comes out of that primary sedimentation goes to the big round structures on the left. And the big round structures on the left are anaerobic digesters. And then cogen is actually the step after anaerobic digesters. But the anaerobic digesters operate on a biological basis. There's bugs in there, and they remove the nitrogen that's in that activated sludge, and we make use out of it. We take methane that comes out of that process and run it through what we call the cogen. It's basically a generation facility. The co part is it does two things. It generates heat from burning off methane, and that heat is used in parts of our process, and it generates power. It's got a big turbine generator that generates power that we can use to power all the pumps and the blowers that are part of the plant process. So it's a great means of reducing waste that if we didn't have this, we'd just be burning off the methane, which we have to do occasionally. But we'd just be burning off the methane like landfills do. But this avoids burning off the methane and puts it to beneficial use, reduces our power bill. It's a great asset. So that's the, and then once the sludge goes through that process where we remove the methane, use it to generate power and heat, what's left goes into the big basins that surround both east and west of this facility, where we go through a multi-step process to get the water out of what's left and turn it into something dry that we can haul off to the landfill. So that's the process. The issue, we've been doing this for years, it works fine, but there's apparently an issue about excess nutrients. By nutrients, I mean primarily phosphorus and nitrogen. I think you'll see references to ammonia. Ammonia is nitrogen, it's nitrogen and hydrogen. So phosphorus and nitrogen are the big issues. We were actually sued in 2018 by an environmental association. I had to check, I am not a member of it, so I'm not part of the other side, but I wasn't sure. They sued us, made a claim that we were violating our permit and violating state law by putting excessive nutrients into the water, and they claimed that did a couple of things. One of which was that it changed the biological makeup of the water and the stuff that lives in the water downstream of our outflow compared to what they claimed was healthier water upstream. And the big way that they claimed it changed it was by those nutrients, the phosphorus and the nitrogen that they were claiming we were putting into the river, were causing algae to grow. And algae squeezes out some of the organisms that naturally occur in the river that we want to have occur in the river. And when algae dies and decomposes, it uses up oxygen in the river, which also harms the fish and the other aquatic life that's in the river. So that was a big issue. The lawsuit is not resolved. It's still pending. Any detailed questions on the lawsuit, I'll defer to Eric, but it's temporarily stayed while we go through the process to renew our permit. I talked about that NPDES permit. We call it NPDES at the beginning of the presentation. It's a 5-year cycle. We're in year 5. We're in a new permit is supposed to be in place in July of 26. And we're in the process of working with DEQ to develop what that permit's going to look like and get it in place in July. And this action is temporarily on hold until that permit is developed and put in place. I just mentioned this permit expires in July. It has limits that we've got to comply with for how much nitrogen, how much phosphorus. And you can see a reference to ammonia, and again, ammonia is nitrogen, that's why it's part of the problem. And our permit also includes, and you'll see these in a moment, the compliance dates that we need to hit. And if we don't hit those dates, we're not in compliance with the permit. So that is all in the permit, and this project is designed to meet those limits on the nutrients and to comply with the compliance dates that are in the permit. And these are compliance dates, and you can see that this started, the current permit was issued in 2021. It had compliance dates in it. First compliance date was a facility plan. That facility plan was completed in 23. That is what it included. Alternatives analysis, taking a look at cost benefit for the different alternatives, making a decision on what we were going to do, what the project was going to look like. That happened 2 years ago, and we submitted that second milestone to DEQ in 24, got them to concur with the basic plan for how we were going to deal with the permit limits. The next milestone we have to hit, and we're in the design process now. We're going to talk more about that later. But the next milestone in the permit is complete design. Complete design. This says September of 26, pending. We're not there yet. We're obviously still working on it. And as of this week, we have requested and now received an amendment to our permit that extends that date to December of 26. And we can stretch out the design period to that date without sacrificing the timeline to get to project completion, because of the method that we're using to contract this, we can actually start doing some of the construction tasks before we're at final design, which is exactly what we're doing, which is exactly why I'm going to be bringing you some actions to spend some money starting next month. So that's the one change. They've changed that final plant design milestone. Everything else is still out there. And I'll point out that last milestone, September 20 and 30. The permit actually says we've got to meet an interim requirement for one of the nutrients, phosphorus, by 2030, and then they have a more stringent final requirement with a compliance date of 2035. We're working on a plan that we think will get us to that final requirement in 2030. So we've got some latitude, but we want to hit that phosphorus requirement at the same time we hit the nitrogen requirement.
Just going to ask a quick question because I've heard, so final design is what date? September what?
Final design completion, end of December 26.
December 26. And then construction got moved to 2030, or is it still holding at 20?
Construction, you're going to get the main guaranteed maximum price request for construction a month after final design completion. And then the completion date for construction is still 2030.
Okay. And then there's...
And that includes some various different commissioning tasks they have to do post-construction to verify that everything works.
And so then do we have an extension on the permit conditions? I just want to make sure I'm understanding. There's a measurement condition 2 years after construction is what it kind of reads here?
We're not looking for any changes to any of those later compliance dates.
Okay. But if construction doesn't get done until 2030, do we get an extension to 2032 on the permit conditions?
If I believe that's the case, yes.
Okay.
And if construction isn't going to be done, we've still got plenty of time to go back and negotiate, and like we just did with the design completion. But again, the delivery method we're using, we have pretty high degree of confidence that we're going to be able to meet the deadlines. And another thing that we get, I'll get into it, construction manager, general contractor delivery model. We've got our designer on board, we've got our contractor on board, and they're working together. And we're at 30% design, and we're going to be bringing you some of the first contract awards to buy material, because we know enough about what we're going to need for some of the first pieces of construction. We got to build a clarifier. We know what that's going to look like. We know the capacity. We know what the piping is going to be involved. And we're going to have them buying that stuff and doing some prep work before final design is complete. So we'll be well under construction before I come to you with the construction guaranteed maximum price contract. And that is all, it allows us to keep track with the compliance deadline, allows us to compress the total project timeline, and having that contractor on board as part of the team also gives them the ability to give us a pretty detailed construction schedule, which we have. And we've reviewed that closely, and it's viable. So we have a much higher degree of confidence in the construction date than we would have if we were low bidding this and we didn't have a contractor on board already. So that was the background, why we got to do this. This is what we're going to do. This is the project, and this is the scope that we started design on last year, and it's got a lot of stuff. That's the takeaway from this charge. We're doing a lot of stuff. The two things on the left that are in bold, BNR basins and denitrification filters, those are the big ticket items. Those are the additional processes. The BNR basin, BNR is biological nutrient removal, biological nitrogen removal actually, but it also removes a certain amount of the phosphorus. It's a 5-stage process. It looks a lot like the aeration basins. It's going to be a huge concrete basin and with the blowers in some of the cells that are part of the process. But it's designed specifically to remove nitrogen and phosphorus. And there are some thought that we might be able to meet the final phosphorus requirements with just this. But if we can't, then the other thing that's in bold, denitrification filters, is that last step. That's the potential tertiary, the third step in the treatment process that we may or may not have to build. We're designing it. It's in the design. We're going to build this with or without it, but if we build it without it, it's going to be built in a way that we can come back and do this at a later date if needed. But those are the two key things. I'm going to come back to this to show you the results of the value engineering process.
Are in the 250 million construction estimate, is the denitrification included in that cost?
No, it is not.
Okay.
The tertiary piece of that is not. So this is graphically what we're looking at doing, and if you remember what I showed you earlier, came in the south end. We're not doing a lot to the primary basin, although we'll come back to that. And the light lines are all the stuff that's there now. These round things are clarifiers. This is the secondary basin, primary basin. The dark lines is all the new stuff. So that's where I tell people that we're basically doubling the footprint of the process part of the facility. We've got a big basin here. We're going to have a bigger basin. This is the biological nitrogen removal basin. We've got clarifiers up here. We're adding clarifiers because we're taking more stuff out with the BNR basin. So we're adding clarifiers, and they're bigger clarifiers. And what I'm getting to is there's a reason that it costs this much. This is a big magnitude for a project. Basically building what we got already over again, and then some. And I want to zero in on that biological nutrient nitrogen removal basin, a little bit of close-up. That's the basin. You can see the secondary one to the left of it. Just to put this in perspective, this is dimensionally accurate. That's what we got. And if football's not your game, you may have recognized this, but that's basically what we got. And you know what this costs, or we got some ideas. And that basin is a large slab of concrete. It's like 4 feet thick. It's going to take us months to pour it. And then when it's poured, when we put it in use, we're going to fill it with 20 foot of water. So it's heavy. And so it's got a lot of reinforcement in it. And what are the two things where the cost has jumped the most during the construction inflation we've had the last few years? Concrete and steel. So yeah, that's a big part of why this thing costs as much as it's going to cost. It's huge. And then this is not in the project. This is some other stuff that it's never been in the project, but when we did the facilities plan, we looked at future needs too. And some of this, and you can actually see here, we're taking a big BNR basin and we're making it bigger. And some date in the future, this is primarily tied to capacity as the population of the service area grows. We got to be able to meet the growing demand. So there's capacity improvements. We've got some capacity improvements and some equipment basically upgrade, and we got parts of the system that are reaching their useful life expectancy, and we're replacing some of that stuff. That's worked into the original plan and part of this. But this is to come. Don't know exactly when. We're not going to probably hit the need for some of those capacity improvements until 2040 or beyond. But it's on the horizon. It's going to come.
So that being said, the current expansion, the last date shown on the first slide was 2045. Is that the target date for the capacity of the new plant?
Yeah, I don't know. I might have to turn to Johnny for that one. 2045 compliance date?
Yeah, and that's based on projected population growth.
Okay.
And I've been doing this a long time, and I've not seen a projected population growth actually come to fruition when the date comes. So we're looking probably at 2050 or beyond.
And what was the end date of the basin plan that includes, basically the master plan of the facility that triggers how far out the future how far out the future expansion would go?
So the facility plan goes out, Facility plan goes out to 2045. We're constructing based on projected growth for 2040 as a conservative estimate for where we'll actually be with how fast the valley's actually growing. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Well, actually, then, if we looked at future BNR, future clarifier 10, what dates are those anticipated to go to?
That's 2045 and beyond, probably realistically 2050 or later.
Mayor, the other thing I would add is a lot of this is pretty speculative because permits are going to change, requirements are going to change. And so what Dan is showing up here is really capacity. What's going to change as far as treatment requirements? It's anybody's best guess.
I guess the one thing that gets me thinking about that is, let's say it takes 10 years to actually complete expansion. So from when you start to when you start, adding up the money to when you getting it done. So for it's yeah, that's the thing is, and it feels like we'll get done with this. Or the question is, will we get done with this and then turn around and need to expand again?
I think the best way to answer that is that depends, as John was saying, on whatever the regulatory requirement realm changes between now and then. What the facility plan addresses is if the conditions of our permit stay the same and our valley grows beyond what we're able to treat now, what you see up there currently is what we're going to have to build. Now, again, I've been doing this a while, likely going to have new requirements in our permit. One of the things that we've done to address that is set up a different fund that, 20, 30 years from now, when there's a different version of us that are all having this discussion, it'll be a lot easier to fund that project.
Okay. And then what is the current end date? What would be the end date of our new permit?
So they're good every 5 years.
5 years.
New one is going to be active 26. It'll expire in 31. We'll get another one that'll expire in 36, ad nauseum.
Okay.
And there are things that are not yet settled in the permit that we're working on.
Right.
That have a big impact on what we build or don't build and when we build or don't build it.
Okay.
Just the permit coming up. And that's always going to be the case. They could add requirements. And one of the things we're looking at, I'm going to talk about in a minute, just changing the way that we measure some of these nutrients going into the river can have a big impact on what we got to build.
Okay.
So it's pretty, for lack of a better term, pretty fluid. It's changing.
Well, I appreciate you clarifying.
Well, that's good too.
We need to be, in 20 or 30 years when we might have to expand, Stein's still going to be on council, so we need to make sure to plan ahead for him.
Okay. Thank you.
So here's the second part, status. I mentioned we've got our project team in place. West Yost and Associates is the lead designer. We've got Carollo Engineering is another engineering firm, and they are helping us with project management and contract administration. And it's a fairly nominal fee to have them on board. And I'm telling you, watching their contribution as we went through the value engineering process, they've probably paid for their involvement in this project already, because they were very integral in that process, had some great ideas, and helped us work through them. So they're part of the team. And then Sladen is the contractor, the CMGC, that's going to build this thing. They're also very good. They actually hosted the value engineering meetings at their facility, the initial one, and they came to the table with a long list of things that we could do to make the process better. This is really the value of this delivery system. Is you got them involved now to fix problems before you bid it out and bring in a contractor that tells you where the design's all messed up. So they're working great as part of this total delivery team, and then Johnny and his team are absolutely involved in every one of the meetings and contributing their expertise and how the system operates and ensuring we're getting a better product. So it's a solid team. They're all in place. We're in design. We hit the 30% design milestone in June. We're working towards 60%, which we should be hitting in March upcoming. We've actually had the first meeting with DEQ last month to talk about the permit. And there's a couple of things. I mentioned changes that might or might not happen in the permit that's going to be renewed this summer could affect what you got to do with the project. And we brought some suggestions to them to consider. One is a study that we did as part of the permit requirements, a stressor analysis. We think that as a result of this study, yes, there's a certain amount of nitrogen and phosphorus in particular, that we're putting into the river, but we don't think we're the problem. We think there's bigger sources upstream that are part of the problem. We had a little bit of a debate with them over that. I'm not sure they're going to buy that, but the goal is, if they agree to that, to some extent, they could soften the limits that they're placing on us. I think our better avenue is the second bullet there under permit development, load limits. I don't want to get too much into the weeds in this, but they gave us a limit that changes depending on the flow going through the plant. So more flow, a different limit. If we just have a fixed amount that we're tied to, it actually helps us a lot better. I think the second one is even a bigger thing. Median, monthly, the limit now is, measure the pollutants, measure the nutrients that you're putting into the river over the course of the month, and we got to hit a median target. What happens with that is, if you have a month, and it's usually one of the this is all geared towards summer. Summer's when it's a problem. They include April as summer. April can have some pretty big rainstorms. It's not dry. And we had one year in particular, when you look at the April numbers and a particularly big storm we had, it drove up, it increased the amount of water we're putting through the plant. So it increased the amount of nutrients we're putting into the river. Which basically required us to hit a much lower nutrients per gallon of water number. We had to have a much lower concentration, which makes it, we got to pay money to get a lower concentration. It costs a lot. It triggers that denitrification filter. But if we didn't count that high flow in April, if we got to do a median instead of an average, that basically eliminates the high, eliminates the low. You get a median. You don't have that volatility. We'd be fine. It would reduce our need to hit a much tighter percentage of phosphorus in the water. Again, and that explanation, I'm sure, is difficult enough. But bottom line is, they seemed interested in the load limit questions. And in fact, they have approved these in permits at other places in the state. So we're hopeful that we can get some relief, at least partially, in some of those. And that goes back to, do we need the denitrification filters, the tertiary, or maybe can we delay them, or maybe can we get rid of them altogether? So we're designing them because we might need them, doing the worst case, but we're deferring a decision to put them into the project. Value engineering, we've touched on a couple of times, 3-month process. The engineer, as engineers always do, gave us an initial cost estimate based on their 30% design. Their estimate was $240 million in construction costs, and it's a $300 million project. There's other costs involved, including their fee. I'm going to show that on a different slide. But we gave that estimate to Sladen, our contractor, and they delivered literally a 200-page estimate document that went line by line and looked at everything going into the plan according to those 30% plans, and that's the number they came up with. We were $48 million off. That's where we got together, rolled up our sleeves, and started looking at what we can do. And this is what we can do. The big box on the left is the exact same thing that I showed you when I told you what was in the original scope. The 3 smaller boxes on the right are things that came out of this value engineering process. And then one of the things that came out of the value engineering process is still in the big box, where it says BNR basins. It's bigger BNR basins. And the reason we went to bigger BNR basins is so we could remove more phosphorus and possibly hit the targets without doing the filters. So over on the right, you see filters. We went to a different kind of filter, which is gives us less flexibility, but it costs much less. We went from 30 million for filters to 18, and we've got it on the deferred list right now. That may change based on what we find out from the DEQ during the permitting process, but that was the biggest savings we had, and included increase in cost for the basins to be able to get rid of the filters. But altogether, that was a huge cost savings.
Am I misremembering, or I thought, didn't we get a grant to help with the fats, oils, and grease situation?
We have a grant, and to pay for the whole fats, oils, and grease facility, we required more than what the grant had. And we had that in the initial scope, and that fits into the category of deferred. We're going to build it someday. We absolutely want to build it. There's a lot of support for it. It'd be a good thing.
So what
but it's not
happens-
essential to the process.
So what happens with that grant then?
I think we,
So it wasn't a grant. The Energy Trust of Oregon, they gave us technical assistant funding for the design work. We progressed the design of that facility to 30% and put it on a shelf for us to finish later. And Energy Trust of Oregon said, well, you get 30% of what we would have offered you for the 100%, here's a check. And it's not something that we have to pay back, it's not a grant, it's just technical design assistance. And then later on when we go to build it, there's also some funding available from them for purchasing some of the equipment.
It was part of our legislative ask on several times, and we've never received a grant to actually construct the facility.
Status on the budget, that's the 300 million. And there's still a couple of plugs in there that we don't have hard numbers for, but we got good numbers on design. The planning is money that we've spent. The pre-construction services, that's what we pay Sladen to do what they're doing now before they get into full construction. That's a good number. Construction is, I'll make an observation about this. You can see contingency down there. That's a razor-thin contingency for this amount of money. That's about 7%, I think, of the construction costs. I'm usually comfortable having 15 to 20 at this point in a major project. But that is not the only contingency that we have. We have contingency built into the construction cost estimate. Sladen included what they call a design evolution contingency, which is 16% of the construction costs. So as we get from 30% to 100% design, if things get added in that cause the construction cost to go up, we can address it through that design evolution contingency. And they've got another contingency for things that happen during construction where they need to come back and make changes and clarify things. And it's about 5 million. So we got 30+ million of additional contingency embedded in that construction cost. So with that, I think we're in pretty good shape to be able to get this through to completion with the budget we got now. I don't think that 250 is going to move for construction costs substantially, but we still get some wiggle room in case it has to. And then financing, we've already issued some revenue bonds backed by our utility rates or sewer treatment utility rates. $20 million issued last year. We're preparing another issuance, $50 million issuance coming up. WIFIA, that's Water Infrastructure Financing and Innovation Act. It's a federal program. They're in the business of providing loans in large sums on very favorable terms to municipalities and counties to implement water, wastewater infrastructure improvements that are often difficult to finance without having some help. And we went through the process to get approval over the last 2 years has been a very lengthy process. We got approval. We were up to the final step. They had a closing date in July 17th, and we were waiting for the closing date. They had one more step. They had to get a final sign-off by the EPA administrator at the federal government, and that just didn't happen. That got put on hold. And we never got an explanation. The change in administration may have had something to do with that. And in fact, there's like 50 or 60 pending applications for this program across the country. And the total that got approved from the date where the new administration took office in January until right around Thanksgiving time, the number that got approved was 0 out of those 50. There were many that were in several stages of the process. I don't know if there was others like us that were at the final approval process. I suspect there were. But the problem, the program basically went silent. And we've been waiting ever since for the word on what was going to happen with that. Well, we got the word this week. We got a closing date set for the 17th of December. So that's fresh off the press. So we're crossing our fingers. And the fact that it was for the 17th of July when it didn't happen, and now we got the 17th of December, I'm not sure that that's a good sign. But we're hopeful that that's going to happen. What that does, favorable interest rates, but it also allows us to defer payment until after construction completion, which allows us to stretch out the impact to the ratepayers of paying for this project. So that's huge for us. And impact on ratepayers, we do have to have some pretty substantial rate increases to cover this. And these are going to come to us, the top 3, 26, 27, 28. These have been approved by the Regional Rate Committee, the joint committee between the city and Rogue Valley Sewer. This is coming to you in an action on December 17th to adopt these rates as what we charge our customers, which is generally the way we work it. Just 15%, fairly steep, and this is 15% for wastewater treatment only. We collect a separate utility rate for the collection, for the sewer collection system. And just to give you a little bit more context, this is what our rate looks like compared to other municipalities in Oregon. Our bar is the second one from the left. We have a very low rate now, and it's great, partly attributed to the fact that we've never ever financed anything in our wastewater treatment plant. This is the first time, so that's obviously gonna cause things to move upward, and you can see the other non-blue lines as you move to the right. Those are future years with the future projected rate increases. We still end up in fairly good shape, and the point I would make is that these are based on combined, because we couldn't tell. A lot of cities don't separate it out like we do between treatment and collection. So we combine our treatment and collection. And when you do that, those 15% increases look more like 6 or 7% increases. Still substantial, still important. But the big picture is that it's not going to result in anything being out of whack with what other cities are doing. And if you're taking a look at sewers as a whole, it's a lot less of an impact than that 15%.
Dan,
So,
I'm
quick,
sorry.
yeah, go ahead. John, did you want to say something?
Dan, can you back up a slide?
I think I can.
So I just wanted to just bring it to council. So we had several study sessions. Several of the counselors are new, where we ran this rate model through council, let them know that we're going to see some fairly large increases early on in this. These rates do taper off over time. This does not continue for the whole life of repaying, the WIFIA or anything else. But we knew we were going to have some fairly steep rate increases initially to get this project started, and those were all shared with council. Is there any questions on financing? And then Dan, if you could just wrap it up.
Sure.
Yeah, so one question on this is currently with revenue bonds and WIFIA is about $217 million. Total project is 300. Is the rest of it how is the rest of that financed? Is that just straight
I
rate?
think we are planning on future revenue bond issuances as well. And then we're going to be able to pay some of the costs directly out of the funds that we have established for it.
Okay, and then as far as the rate increases we see, even though there's more after 30 that are less, I guess the question is 2030 get you to covering basically the financing payment, or is there still significant rate increases beyond 2030?
You don't have that chart? do you?
I don't have the numbers, but as John mentioned, it tapers off, but there's still increases. And there's still going to be probably in the 5 or 6% range.
Yeah, and it does go past 2030.
Yeah.
It goes past 2030.
Yes.
And we started before 20.
Yeah,
Right.
I don't have the model in front of me, but I believe it's a 15-year payback period, and so it starts off 15, 16, it starts going down to 6, 7, 8, and then out in the future it's like 2 or 3.
Okay.
So it does taper off, but there are several years at the beginning that are pretty steep.
Okay. Yes, Mike.
Between the closing of the loan and completion, when we have to start paying it back, does interest accrue during the construction time frame, or does it not start accruing until?
I believe the answer is yes.
Okay.
Nothing's for free.
Garrett?
With the current image we have on the screen, this chart, these blue lines, the other cities, their costs, these are in today's dollars, right?
These are current year dollars, yes.
Okay, and do we know?
And these aren't costs, these are rates. These are
Rates,
what they're
excuse me.
charging their residents.
Yeah, so by 2028, 2029, this is the rightmost Medford line that is comparing future costs with today finance.
That's projected costs using current dollars for 28, 29. And it's current year costs, current year rates for all those comparables too. They're going to go up too.
Okay, that's exactly what I was
Yeah.
getting at. And then did we do our rate model in-house, or did we contract that out? Do we know?
We contracted, I can't
We-
tell you who we use.
We contract with FCS Group, which is out of Portland or out of Seattle, and they do much of the rates throughout the whole Pacific Northwest. They're very popular.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, John.
I'd like to note that RVSS is the cheapest.
RVSS is
Credit
going up
given.
the same amount.
Must have a great board, those guys.
And most of that you send to Medford.
So really, though, what I'm seeing is RVSS proportionately is going to have higher rate increases on an overall basis than Medford is. You guys need to rein in your rate increases, man.
No, we'll be crafty. It'll be less.
Okay, yes, John.
I just, per that comment, one of the challenges that we have is that Medford took a lot of pride in having some of the cheapest sewer rates in the entire state, and that was something we were pretty proud of. The downside of that is we didn't have a bank, we didn't have a reserve fund, and so when this thing hit, we had to start from scratch. And so there's a downside to always being the cheapest. So, and that's not suggesting that RVS is doing things wrong. It's just that's where we found ourselves.
Unless you're as cool as RVSS is.
I think, so we've got general schedule here in front of
And
us.
I think we've already talked about
Yep.
pretty much everything that's on this.
Any other questions? Because I think, it's a pretty extensive background, but in all honesty, there's a lot of counselors who have not sat through this before, so it's kind of important for us to take, this is a significant undertaking for certainly for when it comes to as scale of project is, but legitimately impact to ratepayers is significant. I mean, it is, kind of is what it is, but it's important to have a strong background here, so we appreciate that. I think with that, did you have anything else? Thanks, Dan. What do we got next, sir?
All right, so the next agenda item is item number 2, Main Street survey results. So Staff was directed to do a robust communication process, develop some new alternatives. Those were brought back to you. We were requested to do a robust public involvement process, so we've had an open house that was well attended. We've had a survey that we received over 4,000 responses, and so what Dan wants to do tonight is just kind of give you the results of those survey. We're not asking council to make a decision on this tonight. We just want to show you what we learned from the public input process. And on January 21st, we will be coming back to you asking you for final direction on the future of this project. So with that,
What day was that?
January 21st is the council meeting where we will be asking for a final decision.
And I'll start off this time acknowledging the cast of characters I have behind me that have been involved in this and can answer the tough questions. But we've had Carl McNair, our traffic engineer, Alex Georgievich, city engineer, Carla Palladino's been involved from the planning side. And I don't know if she's sitting behind me right now. I hope she is. KJ from the communication side has played a huge role in putting together what I'm going to show you, the outreach and the survey results. Background, John has already told you some of this. Last time we talked, back in September, I think it was, you gave us direction to go out and get some feedback on the 4 alternatives that we had coming out of the study session that we did in July. And just to refresh your memory, the 4 alternatives go back to the way it was, keep it the way it is. There was a 3rd alternative. I'm going to show you a graphic that shows each of these. They had a buffered bike lane in one direction and parallel parking on both sides of the street. Got rid of the 2-way bike track. And then the 4th option was the converting it to 2-way traffic. These slides show a graphic showing that configuration. This is what we had before. We had the 2 through lanes. The 3rd lane was also a through lane for cars. It was a share-o. That was the bike facility. Bikes had to share a lane with cars and vice versa. And then we had no dedicated bike lane. We had the parking, parallel parking on either side. That was the previous configuration. And I'll point out as I cycle through these quickly that the description at the top, the description and then the cost estimate was exactly what we showed. If you went online to do the survey, this is what you saw for each of the 4 options. It's exactly what you showed if you showed up at, or what you saw if you showed up at the open house and participated in that and gave us your feedback at that event. Showed the same graphic, same description, tried to keep it pretty even between each of the 4 different alternatives. Current configuration, and you can see the separated bike track on the left-hand side. Buffered bike lane, this is the new option that I attempted to describe, but the 2 through lanes, instead of the 3rd lane with the share-o, it's a 3rd lane that's a dedicated bike lane, and then parallel parking on either side. So it's very similar to the way it was, except there's 1 fewer car lane and there's a dedicated bike lane. And a comment on costs. These are the same costs that we showed you in July. And a big part of the cost on this option in particular is just removing and changing the striping, because we didn't modify any curbs, we didn't modify any concrete to do this project. We won't have to modify anything to undo it if we do this option. We'd have to modify a lot to undo it if we went to 2-way traffic. But if to revert back or to do option 3, we got to remove striping and put down different striping, and that was the big part of the cost. And we've got a bid that we just got for striping on streets that we're going to slurry seal, and it was astronomical. So I have every reason to believe that these numbers might be higher, but they'll be higher across the board. Question?
Yeah, the first option, go back the way it was. Okay, thanks. I misread something.
So those are the 4 options that we asked for input on, and this is what we got.
So we got a couple questions real
Oh.
quick. I got Kevin and then I got Jessica.
For option C, has there been any communication with whatever state agency in terms of if option C was done in this way or a similar way, that there would have to be some sort of money back to the state?
We are engaging in that conversation now. We hope to have a hard answer for you by the time we come back in January.
Is there a rough estimate of what dollar figure that is if the state says no to?
$500,000
So it's $500,000 if they reject.
if we have to repay the grant.
Okay, thank you.
That was my question.
So just to tie in, so back to we do slurry seal and restripe. There's a cycle these all go on. What is the cycle that Main Street would be on?
Well, Main Street's not due for slurry again for quite a while because we just did one when we implemented this 2 years ago.
So not a 7-year cycle, it's longer than like 7 years?
Yeah.
Like 10, 12?
Seven's probably close.
7's close? So maybe another 5 years before you would do that, okay.
And just as an aside, not that this matters, the repayment requirement for that grant is 7 years.
Okay.
That's where you're going with that. So for option C, the cost estimate, if we don't have to repay any of the grant, is $580,000 just for the restriping.
Yes.
Okay. And then up to a little over $1 million is assuming.
Yeah, that's the 500-ish.
Okay, thanks.
Grant amount.
Just wanted to make sure I understood what you were just saying there about the 7-year period at which we don't have to pay back. So if we did nothing.
If we keep it for 7 years, we don't have to repay the grant.
So keep it for 5 years, then go back to the original
they don't have a hold on
configuration.
us forever.
It's not worth it. Okay.
So again, the results, we had about 4,000 responses. Out of those 4,000 responses, we had about 700 duplicate responses. Or we had 700 that we weeded out. I think about 400 of those, KJ can correct me, were duplicate responses. IT helped us figure out responses that came from the same IP address. They also identified responses that apparently came from bots and a couple of other things. We prefer to have responses from humans, so we weeded those out. So this is an adjusted number based on what we think reflects the actual sentiment of those who participated.
How do we know the duplicate IT addresses weren't like a husband and wife from the same house?
It's difficult. We don't. It's kind of tricky. And again, this isn't done with statistical precision. I don't have a confidence interval on it. It is more of a sense of the sentiment out there. It's not a real measure of it. But you can take that into consideration. We also had some comments from people who participated about the survey instrument itself. Some thought it was too complicated. Some weren't sure that they'd submitted, so they did it again, and that accounts for some of those duplicate responses, most likely.
So just to make sure I remember, so ranking 1, 2, 3, 4, I can't remember, did we ask them to say, we like this configuration or we dislike this configuration, or did we ask them to rank them in order?
We asked them to rank them in order, and on the online survey, we didn't have any capacity for comments. All we got was a ranking in order, which was another comment we heard from people who participated. They wanted to give us their 2 cents worth, which they generally did, and we've got all those emails, and I'm going to talk about some of them. But no comments on the online survey. We did have the ability for comments to be submitted for the people that showed up in person. And the people that showed up in person had similar results. A lot of people like going back to the previous configuration. The second most popular one on this one was the buffered bike lane, option 3. The second most popular option on the online survey was leave it the way it is. So there's a little bit of difference between the option 2, or the second choice. And as I mentioned, we accepted comments at the open house, and we got a handful. And some of the things that we got, and some of these were occurring, diagonal parking. If you remember back to when we started this process, before I was here, we had, I think, 16 different options that we started with, including one named after an individual that I won't refer back to, that included diagonal parking. And we ruled out the diagonal parking options for various reasons. One was that there wasn't enough right-of-way width to be able to do that and still have the traffic lanes that we needed. One of the diagonal parking options that we looked at, diagonal parking on one side of the street, bike lane on the other side, actually reduced the number of parking spots. So that was in the mix in previous encounters that we've had, but it wasn't one of the four that we that you gave us direction to go forward and take to the public. And then other ones, the chess pieces, the bollards look ugly and they're confusing. And I know of places where they've done separated two-way bike track cycles, and they've used something more attractive and something more intuitive to do the separation. Raised curbs, planters, decorative walls, there's options. They'll cost money, but there's options to do that in a way that's a little bit more attractive. It doesn't solve the problems that people have about, visibility of bikes when you're driving a car north-south across the street, which is one of the ones I think showed up here. It doesn't solve some of the other problems, but it is something that could mitigate the chess pieces, the outright ugliness of what we got out there now.
Okay, so we've had,
Just two organizational responses. One was the bike community, Siskiyou Velo. One was the chamber, and Eli was calling me every week to find out when he could submit a response. It was just chomping at the bit, and the response that they submitted was different than what I expected. The real surprising thing was that chamber and the bike club both favored the same option, which kind of surprised me a little bit, different reasons, but they both favored the same option. So just some overall things that we saw. I already mentioned, the results of the counts. Two-way traffic option is one thing I haven't pointed out. People didn't like the two-way traffic option. We didn't ask them why. Part of it, I'm guessing, is cost, because it was obvious that was far more expensive than the other options, but it scored low in both forums. Question?
Has DMA chimed in on this?
I think the DMA input was in the form of individual business owners.
Oh, when did you get here? Hi. Yeah. She said no.
Yeah. Annie was one of the ones who was also calling me weekly to find out when they could start providing input, but I think the input came in the form of her members, not an organizational letter.
Business owners from downtown came to say this is our personal preference instead of being a corporate feedback.
We just sent the survey out numerous times to property owners, to all of our members, to anybody who's on our newsletter list, numerous times, just trying to make sure that everybody had an opportunity to have a voice.
In the previous configuration of Main Street, we had 3 additional traffic lights at First Street, Grape, and Front, I think. Under the scenario of a return to the previous configuration, will we be reinstalling those traffic lights?
We'll be looking to ensure that they still meet warrants, but I'd hate to remove them.
Okay.
I wouldn't hear when you did this. We removed traffic signals?
We did.
Okay. We'll be checking to see if they meet warrants and acting appropriately.
I can assist with that too. So there were actually 3. There was actually 2 traffic signals that were removed, not 3. And they did not meet warrants before the project started, and so this was an opportunity to remove them.
Okay, thank you.
okay, so we've got public input. We've talked about this quite a bit. Kevin, did you have another question for staff?
Can I give input?
To the counselors?
To everyone watching in here and around the globe.
Okay, so yeah, let's take a few minutes if anybody wants to discuss because it's going to show up at January 21st. Let's get some thoughts out here so we kind of have a general
Yeah.
direction of what to expect.
So the reason I bring this up, because it's a slight alteration to one of the things, and so like I pointed out at our council meeting last week, some of us were able to attend the meet and greet where people shared their thoughts, and I went around and talked to the folks. And there was a pretty good idea that I hadn't thought about, and I want to share that. So can you go to the option C again? Basically, some of the comments that we got were, well, when I open up my car, now when I open up my door, it's in the road. That is always the case. That was always the same. That was actually a pretty frequent comment that we got. It's like, hey, now I'm opening my car, my door, and the traffic there. That didn't change. However, when you look at the right-hand side under this configuration, if you park on the right-hand side, you're opening up your car door to a bike lane. So pretty safe to open up your car door and get out and do whatever you're doing. On the left-hand side, you don't have that option. So one of the thoughts that this gentleman had was, could we reduce the travel lanes or whatever other things and make some sort of gap between the parking lane on the left-hand side and the driving lane? That way, when you're opening your car door, there's a little bit of a gap for you're the passenger to go wherever you're going. I thought that was a pretty good point, and so I want to say that here.
So that would be, if buffered bike lane becomes the choice of the council, a slight difference in width. So maybe on the 21st, be ready to speak to that.
We will be. If you look at the configuration that we're showing here, we've got two buffers on the right-hand side. One to keep bicycles from running into your car door when it's open, and that's 4 feet wide. Might be able to get away with smaller than that. And we've got a smaller buffer between the bike lane and the traffic lane. If we can narrow up that buffer on the right-hand side, it might allow us to create a similar buffer on the left-hand side. We could certainly take a look at that.
Yeah, that's just something I'm wondering if it's plausible, because I'm thinking about it, and I think it makes a lot of sense to give some sort of buffer on that left-hand parking lane. Thank you.
So, Kevin, I'm going to actually just put you on the spot, because I think you've been pretty vocal that you want to go back to the previous configuration. Maybe give your other counselors some thoughts in the upcoming weeks on why that is the best choice.
I will, but in a nutshell, it worked, and most people are pretty happy with it. It's the least confusing and I think safer model than any of the others. I mean, but I'll have further thoughts between now and January. But
Okay. Does anybody else speak to going back to the old configuration? Where's everyone kind of leaning right now in your head? 3, 3, 3, 3, 3.
you mean C when you say 3?
Yeah.
Okay. And Nick still wants two-way traffic.
Clearly, everyone is wrong. They don't understand. This is the best option.
Okay, so
I'm just going to sulk for a
Just
little bit.
just come up with the money.
a general idea. Okay, Kevin.
Where's Ryan?
Or not Kevin. Curlinger. There is a K involved.
You can call me Curly. I freaked John out because I was like, hey, what's that site you guys use to do these drawings? Then I got on Street Mix and I started designing my own streets, and it was really fun.
You are no longer recognized.
I messed with it for a couple hours.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Roundabouts.
And I came up with the exact same idea that Carl had already given us. So good job, Carl. I think there's a couple of points that I think are worth mentioning. We had narrower parking lanes and travel lanes with the previous configuration. They were 7.5-foot parking and 11-foot travel, and this gives us 8-foot parking and 12-foot travel. So that in and of itself creates more of a buffer on parking. That 4-foot buffer on the north side, I think under option 3 could be either adjusted for the entire length and maybe shifted to the south side to create a little bit more buffer of parking. I like that helps. So when we have bump outs and maybe shifts in traffic, that buffer can adjust without the lanes
Can we
of
put the map
travel
back
have
up?
to adjust as much. But I think I don't disagree that traffic used to flow a little bit better downtown with 3 lanes. That is incongruous with creating an environment that is enjoyable to walk around and take families. And, there's a lot of things we did in Medford for a really long time that worked really well in the time. And I think if we're trying to develop downtown into a place that feels more like a destination than somewhere people are traveling through, having 3 lanes, I think does feel like a bit much. I don't think the bike lanes are used extensively now, but I think we'll be remiss to not do some pre-planning as the city grows, because if we say let's just ditch the bike lanes, and then biking becomes more common, or then cyclists just avoid Medford altogether because of that, it's like build it and they'll come, or build it once people complain about it enough, and there's always a balancing act. But I think to not account for, I hate this word, multimodal transportation, I think is doing a disservice as our city continues to grow. We can't just keep doing things the same way. I ran for council because just doing things the same way or not planning ahead well enough has put us in a bad position more than once. I am intrigued by the idea of waiting a few years and not having to deal with any potential grant repayment. At the same time, $500,000 spread out over 7 years doesn't seem like that much of a cost if there's something we can do that will be an immediate improvement for businesses and people enjoying downtown. The one thing I will say is I feel like we should have, as 8th Street turns around and heads back west, I think it would be nice if that went back into a travel lane immediately, because I think coming into that one lane and having things shift over is part of what feels just uncomfortable. I'll shut up. Obviously, I spent a long time thinking about this and messing around with this.
No, that's
Thanks.
That's good. Yeah, and I think there's a point to the going under the viaduct is still pretty tight. You had a question.
I did. First, I want to say it's no question that I did not want to do this in the first place. So you would think my immediate response would be to go back to the way it was. But I don't feel that way. I don't think we need 3 lanes of traffic. I definitely don't like it the way it is. What I do have a question about is kind of what you just touched on, is the coming under the viaduct. Right now, that is very uncomfortable. I mean, that really tight lane of traffic, 1 lane with the parking. I hate that. I hate driving through that. I hate parking right there because it's just so claustrophobic. So I would be curious just to understand what our options are regardless of what we do for that area specifically.
Yeah, so I think 3 things, if I'm going to say it back, that would probably be helpful by the 21st, which would be understanding of the grant repayment implications of an option C. Discussion, maybe there's enough buffer right now for getting out with wider lanes and wider parking bays, but some thought to buffer between getting out of cars and, parked cars and traffic. And then the third is what the treatment looks like going under the viaduct.
Jess, I'll get on Street Mix and try to tweak that.
Do
lane
not
as we
get
come
on
in.
Street Mix.
Great idea.
If there's, is there really, yes, go ahead, John.
One thing we should think about with respect to waiting the other 5 years to complete the 7 is 5 years from now, the cost of doing anything is going to be significantly higher. So we'll save the 500, but maybe spend 500 more or 300 or 200 more because prices have gone up. So it's not really that much of a value at the end of the day. Or at least it could be watered down significantly. I'll put it that way.
Nick and Mike.
Since I'm the only one who's clinging onto the 2-way street, I'll admit defeat.
I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead.
Admit defeat is what I'm doing here. Let me grovel for a second. I as far as like, you know, I think I, like Jess, am not super gung-ho about going back to the way it was. I've looked at the traffic studies. I've looked at the traffic volumes. Like, 3 lanes don't make that big of a difference. I drive Main Street. I mean, having a 3rd lane and knowing how to use it strategically is convenient for getting around the random slow person. But of course, it's only 20 miles an hour through there, and I'd never drive faster than that. So, and so, I mean, when you just look at like what the capacity is, we have a lot of asphalt that gives us an opportunity and the need of only really 2 travel lanes. What else can we do with it? I really am not super gung-ho about the idea of just making it all a giant buffered bike lane, because I'm not convinced that that actually is going to do a whole lot more for downtown. Admittedly, even though I didn't like the 2-way bike track, that was something different and something unique, and I appreciate that we tried something different. I was not, and I was kind of anticipating we'd be back here, but it's really too bad that we can't figure out something more inventive using some of these other, like, and I understand the reality of there's only so much you can do with 52 feet of right of way. So I think making the best out of a bad situation, I'd probably be stuck here with an option C, but I don't know, like, I'd love to see, I'd love to see something more creative with Main Street than just what it is.
Get on the program.
I'll get on Street Mix, Mike. Can you teach me?
Mike, do you have something you wanted to add?
With regards to the repayment, John, that's a really good point. I think the only thing that would motivate me to consider leaving it for 5 more years, and this is probably a can of worms, it would be if we want to consider not a 2-way, but shifting this bike lane to roads other than Main Street. So then we're tackling a couple of things at once, and we could do diagonal parking on Main Street.
Woot woot.
If we got rid of the bike lane, we could.
No, you can't.
It does. I'll show you on Street Mix. It'll fit. I looked at it.
Back in diagonal park.
That being said, part of the reason I did dive into this is we tried something new. I do love that we tried something new. It hasn't been wildly popular. It is a little awkward. I'm disinclined to say, well, let's wait 5 years to save some money, because I feel like we can do something relatively quickly that will have an immediate impact on people who are using this area and businesses who are down there like now. And I feel good about being able to do something relatively quickly.
I'm not trying to jump too much into the January 21st thing, but it's going to be a quick question is, okay, let's say January 21st, we have a nice 7-1 vote to go to option C. What is that timeline? I mean, is this something that we contract out? Is this something we do in-house? Why does it cost $500,000 to restripe lines? Help me out just a little bit on that.
As far as timeline, we haven't put that together yet, but with what we got, we still got to bring it through to a complete design and make sure all the parameters are just right. They'll be a few months to go through that process. And we'll be contracted. We'll contract with somebody to come in and remove the existing markings and the bollards, obviously, which is a significant portion of the cost. And then the cost of marking, especially the specialty markings, the crosswalk markings, the directional markings. They use a thermoplastic process for that. It's expensive and getting more expensive. Just the cost of striping a road, especially with the specialty markings on it, is high.
Can you give me the roughest estimate? The roughest month?
Of time?
Yes.
I got guys behind me that might kick me, but probably 6 months.
Okay. Thank you.
I saw nodding, no
Okay,
tomatoes. I think you're safe.
Okay, a few more. Got John and we got Kevin.
Well, redoing it so we're essentially doing the road twice is suboptimal, of course. Doing it 3 times is really bad. And what we're not really discussing is, at least conceivably, we have a convention center and a baseball field going in very close to where this is. It would be awful if that created some sort of a traffic situation that required whatever we do now to be changed for a 3rd time for another $1 million or more, or 10 if Nick has his way. So I hope we're thinking very hard about that as a possibility as well as we think about what options. Maybe we do need 3 lanes if a lot of people are getting out of baseball games and heading back to the best part of Medford, which is southwest. You know, so let's make sure we think hard about that too. And I'm sure you have, Dan, but I just want to vocalize it.
Yeah, I mean, pardon me. Speed limit is 20 miles an hour. We will be enforcing that. I don't think we need to worry about that middle lane being as, traffic moving as fast as it had in the past. Many times, I guess since this whole thing has happened, I've been watching and thinking about it every time I drive down Main Street. And several times, there's a delivery truck, and now that we've got the people eating in the restaurant, thing there by Elements, not by Elements, by the whiskey place, whatever. It's actually, you're down to 1 lane. And I think also that none of us has spoken yet about the fact that the public has spoken to the extent that we've given the opportunity to. And they've come up also agreeing that we should go back to the original plan. It makes sense to the majority of people that I have spoken to just randomly, not necessarily all my friends, et cetera, but just random people on the street. I ask them, hey, how do you think we should work with Main Street? And pretty much by far most of the people have chosen, let's just go back to the way it was. It seems to be the cheapest option, but could you go back to A for me, if you would, please? So A is about $1 million, and B would be about what now?
A is the way it was. Yeah.
All right, and B is nothing because we wouldn't do anything. But
B is no cost. Keep
right.
it the same.
Bikes right now are the people that I know that ride bikes. They never would have gone down Main Street with or without a bike lane. They generally would either go slowly on the sidewalk or choose another way to get through Main. If they're actually visiting a business on Main Street, they would be, probably riding the sidewalk. So I don't see that we're creating a huge safety buffer for the bicyclists. Not that there are that many of them even now that are riding that way. I think the general consensus is that there aren't that many people utilizing bikes on Main. So for those reasons, I mean, at some point we have to say, once you do poll the people and you come back with a response, maybe we should be listening to them. So.
Yeah. So I think all good. I think you've got plenty of things we had the list of 3, maybe the 4th to add on to that is would there be, is there anything on a somewhat reasonable timeline that would maybe need 3 lanes would be a necessity just to avoid doing something for a 3rd time. And then, your point, Kevin, because I ask people about that and say, what do you think of this? And then a lot of people do say, go back to the way it was. Mm-hmm. And then I ask them why. I said, well, what don't you like? And what I hear is it's claustrophobic to go through. And let me preface this by, if we leave it, I'm fine. I can get down here and pretty no stress. I could get down here back when it was 3 lanes, a few years ago. So I'm fine either way. I don't really care. So I'm completely comfortable with it. But what I heard is it's tight and uncomfortable. And that when you make the left turn, and this is something that I kind of experienced, it's kind of a pain to try and look over your shoulder to see if somebody's coming up in that bike lane.
You just can't see.
You come across, you can't see. So you hit that bike lane, and it's very difficult. And people are uncomfortable because nobody wants to hit a bicyclist. And that's when I look, well, except for Curlinger, but well, he's the one making the comment. No. And that's the one thing about the C, if you are going to maintain the bike lane, putting it out in the open, putting it on a standard side kind of makes the most sense as far as that goes. You would be hard pressed. I understand that if someone's backing into a spot, you may have to let them go, and you wouldn't have to with 3 lanes. I don't know if that's a delay that gets me super worked up. It certainly worked, and people are comfortable with it, and I think if you're uncomfortable now, you know what did work, and that stands out to you. But if at least for me, when I think about what people tell me, why they don't like it now, at least I do think that we're not a giant risk going to a C. But I'm fine with whatever you guys come up with.
Can I just make one real quick comment? Do e-bikes currently, they are not allowed to use bike lanes, is that correct? Does anybody know? The electric bikes?
I can't answer that one. Carl?
Because that makes it tremendously more dangerous to have e-bikes going in those bike lanes, because then you got a motor vehicle you're looking out for as well.
My understanding on e-bikes is that they can use the bike lanes, but they're limited to 20 miles an hour maximum speed. If they're over that, then they're not supposed to be in the bike lane.
Okay, January 20, yes.
Mayor, if I could, I just want to recap. So in preparation for the 21st meeting, what Public Works will be bringing back for you is further information on repaying the grant.
For option C.
Pardon?
Specifically option
Yeah,
C.
for option C. What to do under the viaduct, options for figuring out how to get underneath the viaduct where it gets real tight. Consideration for buffering on the left for the car door swing. A timeline. Dan stepped out and gave a date, but some more firm figures on what a timeline to redo this might be, and then taking a look at future capacity needs. Is there a need to go to 3 lanes? So if we bring those items back to you at 21st, we're good for a decision.
Could we not limit it to C and just beg them, ask them for option A as well?
Oh, no. So somebody's gonna make a motion, you're gonna vote.
No, I mean, on the, seeing if there's any way of wiggling out of not repaying for reverting to the original.
You may as well ask the question while
We can ask the question, but the bike lane was a qualifying factor for that grant.
Send them a fruit basket.
If we go back to no bike lane,
Okay.
no dedicated bike lane. we're not
Quickly,
gonna
one
get it.
question on grant.
So on that, Eric, I'm going to ask my favorite question. What if we just don't pay it back?
Well, if we don't pay back the grant, I'd have to look at the grant terms, but the DOJ would have penalty action, could conceivably bring action in court, and if we don't pay that judgment, could start leaning our properties. So they have ways of getting the money out of us that are a lot more expensive than us just paying what we acknowledge we owe if we do have to.
Your Honor, if I may, while he gave the really good legal answer, the biggest issue is it would make us ineligible for further grants, and we utilize the Safe Routes to School program in our city extensively. We built tons of sidewalks. We would hate to lose access to those funds.
Okay, so if you come up with questions, this is gonna come up, send them out, but other than that, good robust discussion, and thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Do you guys need a break?
No.
I said guys. I already know what your answer is.
Okay.
Ma'am, would you like a
Or
break?
do I not matter?
Your answer is no.
Keep it moving.
We're proceeding?
We are proceeding.
All right, item number 3 is last week in the council officers, we had a discussion about kicking off the recruitment process for the city manager position. Through that process, it was clear that there was some need for further dialogue on that. So Bonnie is going to get this process started, give you an update on kind of where we're at, got a couple questions for you, and then next month we'll be doing a more robust deep dive into what are you needing in a position to make a selection. But the recruitment process, Bonnie's going to cover that now.
Okay. Sorry, I have the sniffles. I'm trying not to, if I sneeze, I apologize. All right, so we wanted to talk at first about finding out the recruitment, which you did a great introduction, thank you. And part of the whole thing with this process is really having transparency and neutrality. That's going to be important. So option 1, I feel like I'm Dan now. Option 1, I don't have cool pictures though. Is that HR would handle we would do it internally. And while that would be probably the lowest cost, we could launch pretty quickly. Our concern may be the political sensitivity considerations that I think we need to be aware of, because we'll get into those. But it would take us a little longer in the process. I mean, we would get started right away, but the issue with that would also be that we don't have the access to certain candidates. We don't have a pool of them waiting. We have to go search them and look for them and cold call. And so that can take a little more time in the process. It takes a bit to build your pipeline, so to speak. The concern for us in this process, and we'll keep talking about it, I guess, is that we do know that there are applicants interested currently that have some current political relationships. We have maybe had been a local, they're a local elected official, or we also know there are people otherwise that may be interested. And so for my office, we want to just kind of stay out of the fray, and we want to make sure that people view us as neutral in the process. So option 2 is the executive search firm. Hopefully, I think that, we had a search firm last, and I want to make sure that we know they did a really good job, I think. We were able to connect with them and do what we called a hybrid model, which we did a lot of the driving of it, and we were able to have input along the way, which is a little different than maybe some executive search firms do. So I want to say, though, that I think the fact that maybe our city manager resigned isn't reflective on them in the process. They have the ability to professionally source. It is considered neutral and independent. Our hopes is that they would have a broader candidate pool because they have pipelines built already. They kind of know what's happening out there if they're already recruiting for city managers in different areas. And they, probably the con is that that's usually a higher cost. Most of the firms were between $28,000 to $35,000. We haven't gotten new prices this time, but it's been, 18 months since we did it, and that's what we paid the last time. So that adds up. Option 3 is not really an option for that, but it's about how we recruit. One of the questions last time was the option to just stay local, just use local or Oregon candidates, and then keep it open until filled. That really, yes, it will have a local regional focus. The concern with that is it could limit a candidate pool. Also, how do you graciously say, well, we're going to keep looking even though someone feels like they put all their, they've already been interviewed, or maybe we vetted them in some way, and then we say, okay, just kind of stay out here, but we're going to keep looking, and then if we don't find what we want, we might come back. And we don't say that, but it doesn't have the best image for that. And so that is a concern, and this for us would not be a recommended option for you. Option 4, two-step recruitment process, which was another option that you asked for, which was could we do phase 1 where we do local, phase 2, full search if needed. Again, I think that has that same kind of connotation to it about who you're selecting. It just looks like we're saying we could word it in a way that says that we're going to give preference to local or Oregon candidates. And then that way it maybe doesn't have that same feel. But it can also delay the approach or the ability to get a city manager in place because it's going to take longer if you don't find what you want with a local or Oregon person and then you move on to another search. That process is going to then delay getting that position filled. Don't get me wrong, I'd like you here forever, John, but you haven't wanted to do that. All right, so the key sensitivity factors that I want us to talk about really or think about is the interest of people from individuals with political or public ties. Are we looking at doing a direct appointment? Are we looking at saying that people should be applying if they're interested? I think that is a decision that would need to be made. We want to make sure that from a legal perspective that our recruitments minimize our risk, that they appear to be impartial, that they're not biased, they're defensible as we go through a recruitment. And so from a legal perspective, I do, consider that. And then it would be HR role considerations. What is going to be done? Is that going to be done through an executive search firm? Is it going to be done through the us here, me. And so just kind of wanting to make sure, how are we addressing some of those concerns? So recommendations considered is the cost versus the reach. So I think it costs more with a recruitment firm, so that's going to have to be a decision. And as I was asked by Counselor Card to see if the recruitment firm that had done it before was willing to give us a discount, and because we had already exceeded the guarantee period for having went past a year. And so they gave us $438 discount. And so we felt that was kind of a slap in the face over everything. And so I think it changes the way we think about that. They actually masked it as bigger, saying it was a $1,500 discount. Last time, though, we got a $751 for nothing, but their price raised, and the total math ended up being $438. So, and then what are the timeline expectations that we are looking at? We need to consider what kind of timeline we want to work in. I know that as the interim, it's a 1-year max appointment, and then it takes longer if you're going through, different methods. It's going to take probably 6 months. And then someone mentioned the consideration that we would have a new council again during part of this, perhaps by the time, or would, when that person gets hired, then going into the next year, it would be a new council, and is that the best time frame for that? And I don't know if that is a consideration, but it was something I heard, and I don't know if that makes a difference. We would want any model, even working with a search firm, which we recommend, we would want to still have our own touch to it. We want to stay connected and understand what's going on. It's important, and some search firms are not as welcoming to that as others, and so we would want to make sure that that's something we talk about with whoever we would select, if that is the way we go. So tonight I'm kind of wanting to know, I know you can't vote, but I am looking at what is your preferred recruitment path? What is your timeline that you're looking at? And are you looking at us contracting out all of those things? So that is really...
Well, if I may, Mayor, Bonnie is not saying it right up here directly, but we're going to do this process however council wants us to and needs us to do it. But if from a staff recommendation, we are recommending hiring a firm, and we are recommending an open competitive process. We can work with any of the options that Bonnie has presented, but if you're looking for what we would prefer and recommend is more of the standard open competitive with using a firm to help us.
Okay, so specific questions to staff versus kind of discussion points.
I have just a discussion.
Okay, let's go to Mike.
I have a discussion point, but 2 questions
Whoa.
first. 2 questions. If we just don't recruit anybody, is John have to stay?
Unfortunately, no, because the charter limits that unless he gets reappointed, which we can work on.
I researched this, and I'm very sad to say there's a specific section saying that a city manager pro tem cannot be reappointed. We're one and done.
Dang.
So
We just have to hire him as the permanent deal then.
I think
Yeah, can they be hired as a
with no
permanent?
application.
Only if we annex his house.
Oh, that's right. That's true. He doesn't live in the city limits.
You may have kind of just touched on this, but if we go with a recruiting firm and we just do open and competitive, can we give them some basic criteria to vet candidates?
Absolutely, and we
First,
should.
I want that touch, but we can say, hey, we need at least these things.
Absolutely. We should develop the profile, which is something I think on January 29th. You had talked about getting, is that the date, I think? That we talked about getting back together and all of you really discussing what you want. And I think that's the critical point. You can give a job description, which tells someone the basics, but it doesn't tell them the expectations of the role and the communication and some of the things that are really important that maybe we didn't emphasize as much, perhaps.
So as a question, and this kind of triggered in my mind, do you think that if council defines say the qualities, the desired qualities of the next candidate, would that help inform the process to go through?
Yes.
So are we a little out of order possibly in what we're doing?
Perhaps, I mean, we need those anyway, whichever way you go. I think we're out of order in that I don't think we're at the point where you should decide whether you're going to recruit with a firm until you really know what you want.
So that being said, maybe this is a good time to at least have the preliminary discussion about how that's recruitment, because it is a little bit complex. The standard, let's go to a national search, could actually scare away candidates who could be good, that may or may not apply. So I don't think we're wasting our time tonight to have at least vet that out, but I do kind of believe that the January 29th is sort of really a critical first step, and then we should be able to get to I guess a recruitment path pretty quick after that. Sorry, Kevin, did you have a question?
I do have a question, actually. It might be helpful for me, and I don't know, some of the new candidates, new council members. Have we always in the past used the executive search method? Have we used all three different types of methods, and which ones have been successful in our own Medford history for the last 20 years, let's say? Because we've had about 5 or 6.
Are we talking for city managers only?
City managers only, yeah.
We used a recruiting firm the last time, and I do believe it was a recruiting firm before.
Yes.
It was half and half.
I was around.
Yeah.
We had a oh, well, I'm going to say we used one. I was going to get to that when it's discussion point time.
Right. So, and then and to answer the question that's not about city managers, though, we do all the directors in-house. And our process was very similar to what they determined was their process also, even though we didn't influence that necessarily. Well, we influenced it, but we didn't select it.
Yeah,
we do the same similar processes.
And I'm gathering that we would not want to use the firm that we used last time. Is that what I'm hearing based on their attitude towards us?
I liked the recruiter we had. She is no longer a recruiter with them. She has changed positions, and they are giving us someone else. I don't know anything about them. They are, they have experience obviously in executive recruitment, but I personally don't know anything about them.
Just the last question. How do we evaluate the actual firms themselves?
Well, last time we got quotes from them, we told them, based on what you're going to talk about on the 29th, what we were looking for. We helped build a profile, and then we talked about which firms to use, and it was a council decision. We had 4 that we brought forth last time.
Open up for discussion a little bit. I will go to, but Nick had his hand up first and then Kevin.
So can you go back? You had a couple slides about concerns, and I like that slide.
Concerns. This?
Maybe it was it? Yeah, sensitivity factors.
Okay.
So,
yes.
So I think one of the things that, we cannot ignore the fact that, we've got Dan and, well, at least Michelle was sitting here for a while, and Debbie are here by virtue of the work that HR has done. So you are very capable of doing a really good search. But it's one thing when you're hiring your peers, it's another thing when you're hiring your boss, especially when there are other considerations. So while I would love to figure out how to save the cost of a search firm, I also appreciate the neutrality concerns. And I think a search firm, if we go that route, makes sense. But I do want to touch on a couple other things that you brought up around timeline and quality of candidates. Timeline, when this first happened, I was a lot more concerned about timeline, but then John stepped in, and if, in my opinion, if we take a little bit longer to go through this search process, we're not really putting ourselves in a bad situation. We have an interim city manager who's widely respected by staff, who's widely respected by the community, and I feel like the city is in really good hands as we take our time to do this search. So I am less concerned about exactly how we fit all of this into a timeline. Obviously, it needs to meet John's pro tem timeline in that sense. From a quality perspective, we could still go through a search firm and end up not hiring the candidate we selected. That's what happened the 2 searches ago, and you guys ended up selecting Brian internally. And so I think the quality question really comes from our meeting in January when we build that profile, we set our requirements and qualification, and if there are candidates wherever they happen to be, we can select a local candidate that's quality, we can select a national candidate that's quality, and so I think setting that profile is really important for us before we start talking about interviewing candidates or anything like that. When we know what a quality city manager looks like, the process to me is less important because we'll be able to identify, do they check our boxes or do they not check our boxes? So with that being said, one of the things that always stuck out to me during the last search that Lynn told us, who was the recruiter we worked with SGR, was that we had an internal candidate who was in the mix, and that dissuaded some people externally from running or from putting their name in, because the assumption was that because we had an internal candidate who was interested in the job, that this process was a smokescreen for us to hire that candidate and give that hiring decision legitimacy, and they didn't want to put their name into the mix. And that is something that happens a lot for a lot of different cities. And so when I think about all these different factors as we put it together, I personally am a fan of the option 4 of creating an open position that we are seeking to recruit candidates. Not a formal recruitment process, but if people want to apply, they want to apply. We take a couple months. We know what a qualified candidate looks like because we've met in January. We've set that profile. And if we don't get a qualified candidate to apply, we can pivot in a few months and then go to a national search. The idea being, hopefully, if there are people who really want this job, we can take a look at them and decide, are they the kind of quality candidate we're looking for? You know, sometimes, you know, you meet at the dance and you dance. Sometimes you step on each other's feet. That doesn't mean that you're not a bad dancer. It's just we're not compatible. And so by trying to shed ourselves of those potential local candidates, and we know that there are some people locally who are interested in this, getting through that process before we jump into a national search may actually open the door to better national candidates. And so, like, the one thing that I would be really not in favor of doing that is, again, going back to the timeline thing. But as I look at this, I think thanks to having John here in this seat, I'm a lot less concerned if we take a couple months, slow down the process, and we do that local look and see what happens out of that process. But again, because I'm not concerned about, and I think you're right to say that we got to be careful about, hey, local people, I'm not sure if I like you, we're going to go to a national search anyway. If that's the approach we're going to take, I'm out of that, because that's not what it's. We got to be able to say, no, you do not meet our requirements as our city manager, and so we can't find somebody else who wants to apply, so we're going to go recruit people to apply to us. And so that's my discussion, that's my suggestion, and I hope that's something that council considers.
A lot of information there.
Hold on real quick. Bonnie, did you have
I just wanted to ask a question. When you said local first, it sounds like it's a confidential, just connection kind of thing, not posted? Is that
No, I'm
what
saying
you're
we
thinking?
post it and we
Okay.
see who wants to apply. If people, I mean, I think our community is well connected enough that if somebody wants this job and we post it on our website, it's going to get out there and people are going to apply. Now, if people outside of our area apply, if people from Oregon or California apply, great. Maybe we can find some good candidate. We can save the cost of a search firm, evaluate them, and they meet our requirements and we have a new city manager. If not, well, then we don't have to waste any time on those candidates through the process of a national search. So I don't see the downside of doing that other than a timeline concern. But again, I think I beat the timeline dead horse to death, so.
Thank you.
I think Mr. Mitten had something to say.
I was going to say if there was any interest in just feeling out feelers. We can't discuss candidates in executive session unless we have a posted position. So that's a statutory prerequisite.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
I was going to talk about dancing, but I'm just going to cross that one off now. I think if you are stepping on someone's feet, the problem is you either have really big feet or you're not a good dancer. But maybe Jessica can help us out as the trained dancer on the dais. So I agree 100% about timing. I had that written down. We are not in any kind of mad rush to get someone immediately. Where I will disagree with is any kind of rolling applications. I think the fact of the matter is that people that are well qualified that we'd want to hire are also going to be seeking out other places to go, right? And so if we have some sort of rolling applications, people are going to put their application in, and then every 2 or 3 months we're going to go through and see our applications and see if we want to hire them. And in the meantime, they probably got another job, because a well-qualified person is going to have lots of options in this type of job field. I thought you made a great point. Another thing I wrote down, if you have internal candidates, people are going to be less likely to apply. When I was on the board of League of Oregon Cities, that's exactly what happened. We had an internal candidate that was acting as the interim. Well, guess what? The candidate quality was very low for a pretty good position, and the internal candidate that was the interim got it. She's wonderful, but you do realize that, who's going to apply if you think you can't make it, right? Especially in this kind of level of job. So how I see this, and to Mr. Keating's point, I don't know how far back Mike Dial goes, but I think he was here for like 12 years. So I think maybe we've had like 3 city managers in 20 years. I don't know how Mike Dial got selected, but we did the search firm thing with Brian Shotun, which is a fun story. He wasn't actually recommended by the search firm to go forward, and we can read about it in the Old Mail Tribune newspapers if you want to see how that one went. And then Rob, we obviously had a search firm. I think the biggest value, and it was mentioned at the search firm, is that their part of their company is literally just seeing who is in all these places, right? So they have that email box or the listserv or whatever that might be, and they say, hey, there's an opening for this position, and they just throw it out there. But they also do the part of like, here's our applications. Then it's up to us on how we want them to work, right? So obviously someone that just has zero, like anyone can apply, right? Even if you don't fit the qualifications, you can still apply. But they'll look at it and be like, okay, we have no, here's the application. We don't recommend they move on. But maybe we see someone that they don't recommend. We're like, ooh, this person's a department head of whatever, and I want to hear more from them. And that was during the last search that kind of happened, where there was maybe some of us that they wanted to hear more. And then that didn't work out. But, as we go through it, we can have those decisions on how that goes. So I think the search firm's value, number one, is just getting those candidates. Everything else is up to us, right? Everything else is up to us. It's not a search firm that's hiring anybody. It's us that looks at it like, oh, here's 3 people we want to keep talking to. Or, like Nick said, maybe we do have a bunch of people and we're like, we don't like any of these people, and we just continue on. That is kind of the beauty of the timing part, where we seem to be in good hands. We're, 2 weeks in? We seem to be in good hands, unless there's something we don't know yet. But that doesn't mean to me, I don't think we should elongate the time just for the fun of it, because we can. I think we should act in a quick manner to try to get people. I think when you talk about timing, maybe the summertime is actually a good time to do it, especially those that have children, because that way they generally would move here and their kids would start school and have that kind of family unit together. They might be less likely to apply for jobs in October or something like that, but I'm sure HR has a better rundown than I could possibly imagine. But that's my take. I think the big thing is I like to work backwards, right? So if you say, okay, we should do interviews in June or something like that, then you can work backwards in terms of how these dates go. Thank you.
So generally, in our regular world, working backwards for positions and not directors and above, at a minimum, it's 90 days. So working backwards, because you have to have time to create it. And like with any job, to the point about the expectations, we absolutely need to look at the job description on the 29th and say, is this really what we want this person to do? Is it really capturing everything? What are our expectations? Because we'll put that, or they will put that, whoever you use, we put that in the profile of what we're looking for. And so I did recruit for Chief Thompson, and I think he was an excellent candidate. And the difference, though, it took me a long time, because I was cold calling across the country and making connections with fire departments and saying, who do you know? It takes a lot longer because, and when I'm saying longer, it took me months, where that's taking part of that time away. where they have hopefully a candidate base of people, or at least, like to your point, kind of know what's going on out there.
With regards to local versus in-house versus recruiting firm, I would also lean towards a recruiting firm for a number of reasons. I don't feel like it has to be quite so either or, though. Like the idea of starting local and then giving the impression of, oh, well, we appreciate our local candidates. None of you guys were quite good enough, so we're going to expand the search. If having someone local is important to us, I think it would make sense to just clarify up front, we really want to vet out some solid local candidates.
Mm-hmm.
The search will expand. You have been shortlisted. Thank you for applying. Because some people we're just going to tell no, right? We're only going to hire one city manager. So if we get more than one applicant, someone's getting told no.
Yes.
So if we can do it expeditiously, we would really like to guarantee some local candidates in this mix. They can apply. We can say, hey, thank you so much for doing that. You one or two, we want to keep you on the list. We're going to expand this. That was the plan from the very beginning. It's not because you're not good enough. It's because it's our due diligence to make sure we're actually looking. Or tell people we're just going to have it open for a certain period of time, no matter who applies. Or have the recruiting firm recruit exactly the same locally as they would be recruiting from Nashville and New York or Chicago. Like, treat the local candidates as if it doesn't matter where they're geographically located. So I do like the idea of keeping some focal on local people who know the community and have some experience, but I don't feel like it has to be quite so, controversial to say we're going to expand the search.
Well, I think to your point, if it's in whatever posting or whatever they're searching for that said we are, our preference is local or Oregon or whatever it is that you're wanting to segment, and then we will be expanding our search. That gives them the idea that maybe we've expanded the search and it's not like we've already determined no.
Well, and I would even go so far, I don't know how this would work or if this would make things better or worse from an HR standpoint or legal standpoint. But to tell, if we get 5 local candidates and we're leaning towards one, we can say, thank you so much, John. You're in strong contention for this. We always planned on expanding the search, but we're very glad to have you as our local candidate in the pool. Because he's going to get it or not. If we go national right off the bat, he's going to get it or not get it.
Right.
Based on the same candidate pool. But now we at least have some local guaranteed.
There is some criteria from a legal perspective that we need to keep in mind. Everyone needs to meet the minimum qualifications of a job to be considered. So, believe it or not, even for that level of positions, there were a ton that didn't meet. We never even got those. They weren't A, B, or C, or however she classified them. And then also, if they're a veteran, there's veterans preference points that we have to consider.
I liked what Nick had to say. He's not here, but there he is, I guess, actually. I like the idea of posting the position and then gathering some of the local candidates first, but telling them we're not making a decision until, say, June or July. I think we're going to be having, some negotiations coming up. We may want to, it'd be nice to have an experienced hand at the helm before we move into those. And then having someone, if it is an outside candidate, or if we don't find anyone locally that we really like, then open it up to the larger Oregon or national pool. That just seems like the right thing to do.
Thank you.
I want to hit a couple points. And Kevin, I don't know if this maybe changed your mind. The way I was originally thinking this was like a couple months of local, like January, February, March, and then we're doing interviews at the end of March, and then by April we're launching a national search kind of a thing. Not like we're doing 6 months of local search and then 6 months of a search firm. Anyway, that was sort of how I envisioned that. I don't know if that changes your...
When we have our study session,
Okay.
maybe we can flesh that out a little bit more.
The other point that I want to touch on, because I hear what I am concerned is a misunderstanding of the local thing, that I don't necessarily think, like, there's two different angles that this local thing matters. One is, do we want a local candidate? And if we want a local candidate, whether we have a search firm or we don't, we're probably going to get a local candidate because that's what we're going to set as our specification. But the other angle is the perception of outside candidates on the presence of a local candidate. And that's the piece that I'm concerned about. Whether we say we want a local candidate or not, if there are local candidates, if there are internal candidates, then other candidates that we may be interested in, their perception on the presence of that candidate could shape their willingness to apply to our position. And that is what I seek to try to eliminate through a phased approach in search. So that way, those who are most likely to raise that red flag for outside candidates will have an opportunity to consider them prior to the step of moving to a full search. So that way, when we do the full search, we can, not only our search firm can, in good faith to those candidates, say, well, Medford opened it up for a few months and looked through all these local candidates, and they're not interested. They want somebody from outside of the area or outside of the organization. And it also speaks to those candidates that if I think I'm really qualified for Medford, I'm not going to be participating in some kind of a smokescreen search. I'm going to be participating in a legitimate search. And so the risk to my professional my professional reputation, what may happen if word gets out that I'm attempting to leave my post, like those become worthwhile risks as a candidate to take because I could land this very desirable position in Medford. And so that's more the concern that I seek to address through the phased approach, not whether we can get a local candidate, because I think that's secondary to if we need to go to the full search, we want the best people applying to our job.
I just want to say that I strongly support the concept that we spend some time and put down the characteristics that we want in a new city manager. I think that is necessarily step one in our process because that informs whether we want to do a local search and then a national search, and I think it informs whether we go for a firm and what kind of firm we go for and what to tell them to look for. So I think that's very important. On the local search front, my understanding is that we would basically post the position, which would probably only garner responses from locals. We wouldn't exclude applications that we would receive from non-locals. But if we fleshed out that pool and it wasn't working, then we would have to turn to a national recruiting firm just for efficiency's sake and probably cost sake. On the aspect of the timeline, I don't want to spend a full year doing this. I think that will suck all the oxygen out of everything else we're doing, and I don't think that's a valuable use of our time. That being said, I'm a strong believer in making sure that we find the right candidate who provides long-term stability and health to the city. So not too hot, not too cold, just right is what I'm going for. On the initial question, staff was kind of posing to us of, are we supposed to do this internally? Do we go for a recruiting firm? I don't know how I feel about it yet. I have mixed feelings about going for a recruiting firm, just because I do think there are many local candidates who would be great to look at, or even candidates statewide. And I know it costs a lot of money, and I firmly do not want to return to the recruiting firm we had in the previous search. So I would want a different firm. Thank you.
Just a quick one. Question for Bonnie. When we say we're going to post it, and I'm presuming that we would also advertise in national publications of some sort, that there's some kind of city manager, newsletter or whatever.
Correct. When we post a job, it goes nationwide. We also have a particular page, it's called a tract, that we build a special page for a particular job. And then anybody that has been in a government job, because it goes out through government jobs, anyone that has city or manager in their title, it's going out to them. And so that is how Michelle was found. At the time, I don't know if she's still here, but she was living in New York. So, it can reach far. It's just like with Chief Thompson, it's reaching, but you're also trying to get, people kept saying fire is very thin. It's very hard to get that. So you have to do more. And in that case, it was, like I said, a lot of cold calling, which we can do. And we're not saying we can't do it. We'll do whatever you ask us to do. One of the things that concerns me, the reason I said it, is kind of just like we don't want to use that search firm that we had last. And is that because of maybe that we were hoping for a more successful, what do
know
I
what you
say
mean,
with
yeah.
that? Recruitment. And I don't want to be that one that you think has had bias or that is, you think that I did not do a good job.
I guess really the reason I asked, in part also, there's no expectation that it would open up to locals first and then nationals or anything. When I was going for a job or any job,
Right.
I always knew that I was applying, competing with people in the firm and people outside the firm at the same time.
Right. But you can put something in there that says that we're looking for, like for planners, we look for people that know Oregon land use law, right? That's so much different than other states. So we can put those things in a posting. So
You see, I was thinking that might discourage non-Oregonian people. I
That's-
would just leave it,
yeah.
better not said.
I mean, and I guess you guys all sort that out.
Yeah, I would support the this one in front of us. I don't know about the other three of you guys, but when we got down to the last handful, I felt like there was a qualified applicant last time, and I was kind of going in the back of my mind, like, did we just waste a bunch of money on a firm when we had a local guy? But yeah, I would like to see, like what we're discussing, where it gets posted and see what we get, and then go farther out if we need to.
So from the presentation, which I appreciate, and I appreciate the honesty of just saying this is how we would recommend, but we'll do what you want. I mean, back to you go through the whole process and then you turn around and say, well, shoot, we had a candidate all along, right? And that's sort of the downside to doing the full search. Or you go through the whole thing and and then you get down to the end and you say, we're going to keep looking. You go through the whole process, and that has happened before as well. I don't know that there's a ton more information we can get tonight. Are you comfortable if we go ahead and do that? We're not getting too far behind if you don't get direction tonight on.
Oh, I don't think, to your point earlier, I don't think it's time for that direction. Really, the first part before we can do a posting, which we'd have to give to a recruitment firm and all of that, is for you to do the work on January 29th. Is to sort out the expectations, we write them down. I'll send you all he'll send you all the job descriptions of the city manager ahead of time so that you can play with it and look and see if it's what you want. I think you need to go through those steps so that we can build more exactly what you want.
Okay. Yes, go ahead, Mr. Kroninger.
This might be more for conversation on the 28th or 9th, which is
One
fine.
of those days.
But with regards to like doing the search, I'm the kind of guy, like if I'm looking for a good pair of speakers, I'll find something I think is good and I'll do a ton of research to go look at 6 or 7 other different sets of speakers only to determine that, yeah, that first one is the one I want. So personally, to do our due diligence for a position of this caliber, I don't view it as a waste if we're using it to verify our results. Just putting that out there.
I'm sorry, quick question for Bonnie again. Are we going to use the exact same search description as we had for the last time?
No.
So can we see a copy of the old one and the new one?
We're going to give you
guess?
the old profile that was used. We'll give you the job description that we have that's been built for that, and then you can figure out. Correct. Mhm. And you'll get that sent. I'll send it to him tomorrow, and he'll get that sent out soon.
And one thing to note is before we're allowed to have executive sessions as part of this process, in addition to posting the position, we need to actually have a resolution choosing basically what we're looking for. Last time we wrote that very broadly to give us the most leeway in looking at different candidates. I think what I'm hearing tonight is that council wants to have kind of specific criteria identified which may help focus the process, and so it will look very different.
John, did you have something?
So Mayor, what I think what we could shoot for, and then the meeting is on the 28th, it's not the 29th.
Okay.
So it's
My apologies.
it's the 4th Wednesday of the month. So what we'll be doing at that meeting is getting the details of what you're looking for, and Bonnie will have some materials prepared for that, the old search, and some thoughts and suggestions. I think Bonnie can also do a little bit of outreach, not an RFP process, but do a little bit of outreach to firms to get a little better feel for the price, availability, and tell you what that looks like. And then she can give you some additional details on what this two-step or phased approach might look like, the pitfalls with it, and the advantages of it. And then those 3 items you can use then to make a final decision.
No, I think those all make good sense. And yeah, you've heard the dialogue that we've had and understanding the pros and cons as presented and felt back. So if you guys can kind of glean something out of that, that would be helpful to come back with as well. And then clearly, yeah, would be very nice to know. Firms are going to be about X amount. We've got 3 ready to, that was actually going to be a question saying, can you pre-vet prior to that?
Yeah, and I
date?
can.
Yeah. Okay. I think we're good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
All right, super. All right. See you guys next week.
Council officers?
No.
Nothing further from me, Your Honor.
So we had 5 items on our agenda. The first item, the special election invoice, so the election that we just had, we were the only item on the ballot in Medford, so the entire cost of that election was borne by the city. That cost turned out to be a little bit more than we expected, $86,000 from the county. That can be paid from contingency, but John just wanted to bring that to us so we are aware of what happened. Second item on the agenda, does anyone have any questions on that? What? At least we won. So we got something for our money, right? American Cornhole Pro-Am Kickoff. Travel Medford is requesting counselors to participate. This is January 29th. 5:30 to 7 at Rogex. If we participate, we're paired with a pro player. If you are interested in playing, please inform John Weil and he'll pass on those. Pickleball, yeah. No, cornhole.
Oh, God, no.
Cornhole.
Kevin wants a rematch on me, and I want a rematch on Ivan.
Pro amateur kickoff. So, sounds like we're going to have I'll take a sign up too, John, if you're writing down names. Third item, 4th Street slurry seal and restriping. As Dan alluded to during his presentation, the grants, the bids that came back on slurry sealing came back higher than expected. Originally, we had estimated about $100,000 to do 4th Street slurry, seal, and restriping. It is higher than that, and so Public Works is going to adjust the timing on 4th Street. We are going to push that off a year and revisit planning to pave in 2027, so Public Works will come back to us in fall 26. They wanted to let us know because there was a lot of discussion on 4th Street and the configuration, so there will be a study session circa fall 26 where we're going to have a longer conversation about 4th Street. Fourth item, any questions on that, sorry? Fourth item on the agenda, New Spirit Village is requesting a $1.23 million pass-through grant to the city. And so there was a couple things that Ms. King wanted to bring to us about this. While it is a pass-through grant, there is staff work that goes into it, and accepting the grant ultimately requires the mayor's signature. And so in the future, as these requests come to us, planning is going to bring these to council to ensure that these grants are compatible with our goals and interests for the city, and so that way the staff time that's used to help with these pass-through grants, if that isn't something that is consistent with council's goals, then we're not using the staff time for that kind of stuff. Fifth item, the Loring, the old Ramada. Chief Ivans brought us an update. The police did a visit. There were 40-plus people inside. The fence is destroyed. The building is basically completely in disrepair, and it is home to a lot of transients. And so the city attorney has been in contact with the bank We have issued civil penalties. We have declared the building unfit for occupancy. The bank has been talking to us. They hope, this is the bank's hope, so there's no guarantees here. There is a foreclosure ongoing, and so their hope is that the bank will take possession of it in the first quarter of 2026. And the bank's goal is as quickly as they can to get that building brought down. For them to hire staff to try to keep that building, to protect for people going in, it's just cheaper for them to tear the thing down. So this has been a significantly blighted property for the city for some time, and so hopefully we are seeing a resolution on the horizon. Is there anything else that you'd like to add to that, Mr. Minton?
That's perfect, thank you.
All right. Any questions about council officers? With that, Mr. Mayor? All righty, we are adjourned.